Hey folks, South Croydon again. A chance to not only examine and enjoy once again the Victorian splendour around here, but also to look at some railway related places. And this walk was sent in by member Martyn. Thank you very much, Martyn, and I hope I do it justice. Without further ado, let's explore Dornton Road and get things moving. Dornton Road houses, once again, beautiful examples of Victorian architecture in Croydon. I think these were mainly constructed in the 1890s, so towards the end of the Victorian style, I suppose. Although I noticed, and we'll probably capture this a few times, that some of the brick patterns, they're like a Flemish bond, which tended to be used in the sort of early to mid-Victorian phase. Whilst I'd like to think that the Victorians had a consistent style all the way through the various decades that made up the era, I think in reality there were bits and pieces borrowed, and probably no two houses are alike. That said, so I'm looking there at number 10. Now, I did find in an old newspaper article where there was new building approved for a couple of properties, two houses in Dornton Road, and the builder was a Mr. Mundy who lived up in Battersea, and I found that number 10 was indeed one of Mr. Mundy's properties. So it's nice that we've got the information available to do a little bit of detective work, but often these houses were built in twos or maybe threes. You didn't really have the grand building schemes that we'd probably associate today. They really are easy on the eye. I personally like to see the brickwork exposed and a very solid sort of mouldings and decoration around the windows. Many of these I think will be apartments now, and probably quite grand apartments. Large rooms, lots of light coming in, tall ceilings, that kind of thing. There's a reference over there to TM House and Hostels, bed sits available. So a bit of an advertising notice. And this one here, number 20. That's a stunner as well. Often the frontage of these properties wasn't that grand in terms of the width of the property, but they did go back a long way, sometimes down into a cellar. And pretty much all of the available space was very carefully used. And we have some nice sunshine today and blue sky with which to show this visual piece of history here in South Croydon. So we're going to carry along Dornton Road, and then we're going to head towards the site of, I say Selsdon railway station, Selsdon Road railway station, which is not far from the end of the road here. We would think bomb damage took out a house there. I haven't done the research into the records, but I think that's likely. And we've got, this is number 26, possibly 24 and 26 across these two plots. But again, you almost don't need my commentary. You can just enjoy the visual. It's a nice quiet road here, Dornton, cul-de-sac. And they've even done the tree work, probably in the autumn, winter time, to help show it all in its glory. So yeah, built in the 1890s, I would imagine there were multiple phases of the build and possibly different builders. And there were apparently 1 in 6 houses in Great Britain was built in the Victorian reign. Quite understandable, it was a long reign. But also about 1 in 10 were owned. Most of them were leased, and in fact in the case of Mundy, he is down as the owner of the property at number 10 back there. And the property was let. So the builder would typically build 2 or 3 houses, something like that, and own them and let them out, and that's how they would get some income back from their outlay. And obviously a newer set of perhaps masonettes there. So we reach down to the end here. There's all sorts of pathways and things here. These will feature. So let's have a little look at the footbridge up here. And heed the warning about dangerous barbed wire and a very noisy power tool. So the footbridge is actually fairly new structure, but what it goes over, carefully holds camera, is no more. That is the old railway line that leads up to what was Combe Road station. Back in the other way it was Selsdon Road. They renamed it Selsdon, which makes little sense because Selsdon's about 2 miles away up a hill. So some quick facts about the station. Opened 10th of August 1885, closed 1st of January 1917, reopened 1st of May 1919, electrified and renamed to Selsdon 1935, finally closed 16th of May 1983 when the whole of this line was closed. So Combe Road, which I featured in a previous video, and up to Bingham Road, which I'll feature in a future video. This is the top of the properties at Birch End Close, and it's private in terms of parking. There are a lot of notices around, so please respect those if you come up here. We're on foot, but you can see the rail there and what looks to be a platform on the other side. So this is part of the Selsdon Road, later to become Selsdon railway station setup. Amazing they just left the track there, but I imagine, like a lot of these major projects, it's sometimes easier to do that than go to the trouble of lifting it. And of course it acts as a bit of a museum piece in some ways. Not quite sure the full extent, but someone will know. So yeah, nice to see that. Then we've got the active line, the Oxted line, still with a lot of platform structure all the way down. Obviously this is now still working railway. We have a train now coming through on the Oxted line, and when this continues its journey it will go through Woldingham, which I featured in the World's End video. Past the platform that would have existed when this was Selsdon Road station. So this area would have been where you would have come up at the station. We're going to head back now to Dornton Road again, and then to our next special site. So as we exit what was the station approach road, so you've got the end of the platform there and the line that we just saw, the train, and we're just heading out of Birch End Close down what was the station approach road, and that will take us back to the end of Dornton Road, where we'll go back on the other side and have a look at some of the odd number properties. Just to put in some context, so the furthest bridge, that is the fast line, the sort of London to South Coast line. The bridge nearest here, this is where the train just went over on the Oxted line, and then up here and straight ahead, so this was where we went at the beginning, where the footbridge was, over the very old sort of Elmer's End line. It's probably easier to show you how they all fit on the map of this particular area. Cool. We are back in Dornton Road. I feel I can probably walk in the road here because it's quite quiet. And again, beautiful features, got the Flemish Bond. At the very top there, we've got some slightly different coloured bricks, some decoration work going on in the gable area there. And different features that took place in Victorian architecture. I mentioned earlier, it's strange that you could see them as being peculiar to one particular decade, but I think by the time we got to the 1890s, perhaps it was fill your boots. If you're a builder, developer, and you like a particular type of building, then just choose any combination of features to your heart's content. So number 33 there, it seems to have all its chimneys intact, which we can't say for some of the other properties. Some might have just one or two, but they're not a consistent feature all the way down the road. So I guess modern ways of heating the home. You have a flue where you might have a chimney before. Many of them have the same entrance door arrangement. I'm not seeing any Italianate features that would have been early to mid-Victorian. Definitely seeing the brick pattern there, number 27 at the very top there in the gable. That seems to be the feature, the consistent feature throughout the Dornton Road houses. Of course, some of them have had some, rendering work done. So all that would have been lost. Not seen any marks to show the year, other than the research that I mentioned at the beginning, which went back to 1890s. And this one, which my spotter Graham pointed out, that they've got a side entrance now, but that would have been the original doorway. Exactly the same styling of the sort of archway over the top. Well, flattened arch, there's probably a technical term, answers in the comments. But very, very nice, very pleasing on the eye. I think also the window styling in many cases is the same, maybe a modern sash. But thankfully not too many examples of a modern window put in a decorative, classically styled house. Actually, what looks to be a roof window up the top there in the gable has sort of taken out part of that pattern. Very nice ridge decoration on the top of the roofs on these. Hung tiles on the side. Number 17. And once again, I think back to the days of staff, servants, cooks, horse and carriage and the like. Really, really nice part of South Croydon. I'm not sure if this features on the local heritage reviews and analysis that London Borough of Croydon did, but because some of them were proposed but weren't accepted as such. I think there's almost self-protection anyway. People look after their properties, they're proud to have these wonderful looking houses. But a formal protection would always be nice. Very different feature there on the end. We've got the brick inlay on the gable. Not seen that before. That's a site undergoing some development right now. Yeah, very, very decorative at the top there. Almost arts and crafts style, which there was a sort of art and crafts period in Victorian times and then like a revival towards Edwardian. So we're heading back down to Croydon Road. We're going to take a right and have a look at a feature that has possibly scratched some heads over the years, all to be revealed. So because I'm always looking at stuff and I hadn't really considered it, these are much later, very late Victorian, and I believe, if my limited understanding is correct, those are mullion windows there, so like a concrete sections and then the window panes in between each one. Definitely not the Victorian bay, probably around that time, and it seems that these properties all along here have that styling. And then we've got Southern Staircases business premises, and then this feature. I remember looking at this many years ago when I used to work in South Croydon, and I looked it up and I found the answer, but I mean, these look like they're some sort of prison bars, and then inside you've got what almost looks like a dwelling of sorts. Very decorative, amazing brickwork, but I understand this is a very early substation building. That is likely to confirm that story. So the walls come along here, and we got the very solid structure here. There's still some kind of electrical feature here. We've got some, that looks like a very old, what, cast iron drain pipe. So if I step back and look at the whole structure, possibly a doorway here on this side. This was some sort of, not really a window, is it? It's more of a vent. Some infrastructure here in the first bit, and then something else going on through there. So an old electricity substation is the best understanding that we have. Nice little find. Just to add more context to this story again, so this is the bridge, and this, next to the bridge, is the old substation building. And going back to the bridge, that actually carries the track that we saw further on for the now defunct Elmer's Head line. Hope that all makes sense. So we're now going further up the road to find another disused railway location. In a previous video I mentioned that I would come back perhaps in the winter weather and explore this next piece. So we're going to pop along this footpath in Spencer Road. Clue is in the name. This footpath connects through from Camden Road all the way through to South Croydon Station, and we'll finish off the walk today at South Croydon. So we have another fairly modern footbridge, and we can see some track, and this was the very short-lived Spencer Road Halt location. We'll pop up and have a look from the bridge down in a minute. It's just that we get the dieback this time of year, so there's slightly more chance of seeing some evidence. So as we ascend the footbridge, so on the 1st of July 1906, a new halt was opened between Coombe Lane and Selsdon. It was an attempt to attract more passengers to the Selsdon line, and it had two 100-feet timber platforms made out of old sleepers but no buildings, just a wooden name board and a number of posts for holding oil lamps in winter. And the footbridge linked the platforms and also formed part of a footpath between Spencer Road and Birdhurst Rise. So 1906 it was opened, 1915 it was closed. Trying to, as much as possible, pick out some details. We're looking down the line to Selsdon Station, or Selsdon Road Station. That's where we just came from, that's in that direction. And going in this direction, you'd get to Coombe Road Station. It's been left once again for nature to take it over. I came here in the warmer weather and you really couldn't see anything, so I was quite pleased that nearer to ground level we were able to see a little bit of track, and we'll see if we can see a bit more on the other side when we go down. But yeah, this line has just been left. If you look at old, even just on Apple Maps, those kind of things, looking over on the bridge by the substation building, you see that the track's down there. It's visible at whatever point the photos of the map was taken. And they just let it go. I'm not going to sing the song. Right, so let's go down and see if we can pick out anything. On the basis that they were timber platforms, I'm not expecting anything to remain there. What we have got though, which I believe I researched, is some old tank traps over the back there. And you can actually get a reasonable view here. Some of the rail there in situ just a small section, it may even be broken off. But going back wide, you get an idea there that it would have just continued. So yeah, Spencer Road just through on the other side. And the best chance of seeing it most definitely is winter time. So interesting, these pathways. A comment on an earlier video like I did in this area was that they were used by the staff to make their way between various houses that they were working in, and almost like the fact that they would be not seen by the great and the good, a bit like inside the houses where they would use servants' quarters, servants' staircases and that kind of thing. So maybe these pathways that we're treading now were used very regularly by staff serving the houses many moons ago. Of course, a lot of them lived in, so maybe they didn't need to go out very often, but if you've got any more that helps to tell that story, I'd love to hear from you. So this is the footbridge over South Croydon station, and there we have a train coming through. I think it said Reigate on the front. This is the main line through to East Croydon, which is just up there, and then obviously south down there, and obviously over where we've come from, which was more to the left, is where we had these three lines, the Oxted line, this line, and obviously the original now defunct line. And this is where Graham and I have watched steam trains. That said Reigate on, definitely. This is where Graham and I have watched trains coming through the past, these steam Santa specials and the like. Some bonus footage coming up, because really that was the planned part of the walk. But I thought, actually, if I loop around to where I parked the car at Lloyd Park, free for 3 hours, then I might be able to pick up some little nuggets on the way. So that's the plan. We'll see what we can see. Very grand design there. Italianate style front door. Bit of a mixture here. Somewhat look to be 1930s. And some apartments. And on the other side, I would suggest mid-Victorian. Looking at some of the features again, the arch designs above the windows. Still got the bays downstairs. And a plaque. Alfred Russel Wallace, naturalist. I have not seen that before. That is probably because when you're whizzing by in a car, you don't see stuff. So I'm surrounded here. The decoration on these are amazing. Basement rooms all the way down there. Suggests possibly built by the same builder. And here, it's just nice to stop and take in these houses. Some of them back in the day would have had sort of access point at the front of the house to let coal in. So the coal store, the coal cellar was at the front of the property. Amazing designs. Some marks there. I don't know what they mean, what they signify. Builder's mark, I'm suggesting. Similar thing there, different marks, but in the same place. And I know that some of those on the other side of the road have been bed and breakfasts, guest houses, that kind of thing. Should you choose to take a holiday in Croydon, or more likely you just need to stay somewhere for the night. And look at the symmetry on that. Well, on both of them really, but certainly the one directly in front of me. It really is important to get out on foot to experience these things and get your steps in. Just learn so much more about our surroundings. Really quite amazing. My eye is drawn to this wonderful house opposite. Incredible decoration in the gable on the left. On the right we've got more decoration and a pigeon, and 1903, so Edwardian built, but what a stunner. This whole sequence up here, I think all different builders, but excellent styling. Italianate style windows there on the ground floor and a very decorative entranceway, Shirley Lodge Mansions, punctuated by a modern apartment block, and then a substantial looking building there where had some paint and some modernisation, but Saffron Valley Collegiate, and then another superb looking house there, number 47 on the corner. That may also have some commercial use or just be apartments, but beautiful looking building. And less so on the right hand side, but a couple more examples on the end. I think there's been a lot of conversion on the corner one here. Essentially Victorian house, maybe quite early, slightly flatter roof, and it ends just before the railway line that we looked at from the bridge just now. Another fine example. Slightly modern windows, but sometimes that has to be done through cost. Entrance to Park Hill Recreation Ground with some amazing walls, albeit perhaps some repairs needed, and Coombe Cliff Lodge there. That will be an original building, and I think we see modern repairs to the wall here joining up with the original wall. A little noisy with the traffic here, and I'm going to call out one final feature to end the video, just a little bit further up. So this is Water Tower Hill. So this is on the corner of Water Tower Hill, and it says Drinking Fountain Cattle Trough Association. Not in use anymore, but a nice little feature. I won't take a drink out of that. And Water Tower Hill leads to, guess what? The water tower, which will feature in a video to come. Thank you once again for joining me on one of my walks. Really appreciate it. A little bit different, but always a nice excuse to show off the Victorian architecture that we've got in Croydon, plus some railway features that were a little bit different too. I'll put in the bottom of the screen what I'd like you to do. Should be self-explanatory. In the meantime, look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.